right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another New Year's Indie Book Blitz live panel. This is the last day of panels. We have done 24 Book Blitz lives so far this year. You guys are number 25.
Wow.
So welcome. We've got a middle grade / young adult sci-fi author panel. This is the first time I've ever had this genre on. So thank you both for being here.
Yeah,
It's a
thank
pleasure
you
to be
so
here.
much.
It's so good to actually meet you and like put faces to names. And we have Sarah on and we have Mary on. And Mary was on our Spiffbo, the self-published fantasy blog off Blitz this summer, which was a really short Blitz. You can see the playlist in my channel with like 80 authors over the course of like 4 days or something. It was
a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And then Sarah, I'm meeting for the first time today as well. So good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
Yeah, so Sarah, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what kind of books you write, and what book or series that you're known for.
So I'm a self-published author. I wrote my debut series, the first book published in 2022. It's about a galactic race of superheroes that are charged with protecting the universe, but not everyone agrees with this task. So my main character finds out really quickly that the bad actors actually want to take over the multiverse, and she's the only one who can stop everything. So that's The Progenitor, is the title of the first book.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it was really fun to write because I definitely blended in sci-fi with like kind of like mythological fantasy into it, and definitely had some influences from Marvel because that's what I was watching at the time.
So do you feel like yours falls in like that middle grade 8 to 12 or the young adult 12 to 18?
Young adult, definitely. But I like to write things so that even if, like maybe some of the bigger words might be harder for the younger kids, but everyone from, younger to older can read my books without having to. So it's like a family book.
Yeah. Good to know, because we talked about on a panel yesterday how young adult is becoming darker and darker. And it's like, oh, you're kids, here's Wizard of Oz and all these things. So the world is magical on the horror panel. And then we were like, you hit high school and it goes, and here's all the dystopian fiction.
Yeah.
Especially, I think, with sci-fi and science fantasy, there's this undertone of YA being that darker. So
it can get darker. Yeah, that's what I'm next. My next project's going to be a YA dystopian, but with more fantasy elements to it. So you still got that kind of like Marvel-ness to it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for hopping on with us. And Mary, welcome back. Tell us a little bit about your books.
Yeah, well, I think sorry. I think we might have to rename this panel the superhero YA panel.
Yeah. Science fantasy.
We're indie. We can make the rules.
Yeah. Because I published my first book beta in 2020, and it is YA superhero with sci-fi and fantasy elements. And it is about a girl with no superpowers doing her best.
Nice.
With varying results. So it was such a fun series to write. The entire trilogy is out. I've got them all right here. They're fat, but they read fast. But they follow Samantha, who does not have superpowers in this world of superhumans, and her and her family are moving to this man-made island city of New Delos, and immediately someone is trying to kidnap her and she doesn't know why. And her roommate is kidnapped instead. So she decides she's going to try to join the secret superhero team that she has uncovered at her high school to try to get her roommate back. But again, no superpowers. So she's not well equipped. It's a really fun story. You've got I like to take ordinary things and kind of mix them with the fantastical. So you have history class and high school bullies, but then super villains. So and there's definitely again mythological elements in mine too. So it takes some very fun twists.
I love that, and I love the empowerment that's sort of hinted at there. If you're a normal human and you can take on supervillain bullies, then yes. You can deal
And
with
she
the human.
doesn't get powers because that's everyone's like, oh, there's a big twist. Does she get powers? And I'm like, no, give me more credit than that.
All the ways she can win without powers.
Yeah, and a lot of times she does not win.
Oh,
She's very, very good at getting back up again.
I love that. I love that. Great original messaging there too. And yes, and congratulations on how far Beta went in Spiffbo.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been quite a year.
It was wild being part of Spiffbo. Like my number of page reads on KU just like skyrocketed, especially in July. July was such a good month. And I'm like, how do I reach that again?
Yeah, we talked yesterday. We had a Spiffbo panel. So if you're watching and you're like, what is Spiffbo? That's a self-published fantasy blog off. And there were 300 indie authors that put their books in for the contest. And this was their 9th year. And so we had a panel yesterday of some authors just talking about, the contest of what we took away from it and everything. And the community aspect and being prepared were definitely two things that I felt like I was not expecting, because it's not like any other contest that I've ever done. Because usually you just send your book to the contest and you're like, oh, okay, if I win.
No, I feel like it really is the prize in Spiffbo are the friends we make along the way.
Yeah, when I logged into Twitter and I saw my Twitter blowing up the day I submitted the entry, I was like, I wish I had my book free so that more readers could have been able to access the book.
Right. Yep.
But yeah, Sarah's taking notes. So they're doing next year. They're calling it Spiff Box unofficially already, I think.
Oh, I did not know that. Oh, because it's 10.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
So Sarah, there's time. You can jump in the next year.
It's fun. I would recommend it. I mean, I think though all the slots filled up in like 42 minutes this year, which is wild because I definitely submitted mine at minute 41.
Well, they kept a list. They kept it open a little bit for people whose books didn't qualify and stuff, or that they had put in, a book that wasn't a first in series or something like that, I think.
Right. All those there were some of those though, but it's like, oh, you don't have to read the first one to have read the second one. And I was like, well, okay. Like, no, I never would have thought to do that.
Yeah. So very excited to talk a little bit about YA when it comes to the sci-fi and science fantasy with you guys today. Where do you feel like that line is drawn to determine whether your book is trade, which is like the adult 18 plus, and then for the younger audience that you're writing for?
Well, I know definitely I think it has to do partially with what age your main character is. If you start going into the older adult stuff, they're going to be like 20 plus, and then you're going to lose some of your younger audience because they might not be ready for that kind of content yet. And then I think the other aspect too is trying to keep it to where you can, because I think YA is a little bit difficult because you do have, older readers reading YA, but then you also have the younger ones. So where do you find that balance between the age groups and what's appropriate for them?
Yeah,
I would definitely agree. It's like who are we writing for? I try to think about it as like movie ratings, like PG-13. And then like really like a lot of it is just like, would this content interest a 16-year-old? It's kind of like, because like, I don't know, there's plenty of adult stuff that's PG-13, but a 16-year-old would be bored by. And then I think a lot of times there's different themes, I think, that are really prevalent in YA fiction, like the themes of challenging authority that's maybe not a great authority, coming of age stuff. I tried to make mine as like teenagery as possible. I was like all the angst, all the high school drama,
the rebellion,
which of course then you have like the 35-year-old readers who are like, why would I want to be in high school again? And I'm like, well, then it's not for you.
Yeah. But then there's plenty that would.
Absolutely. So many of my like readers are in their 30s. Although then there's like, because I'm super heavy on TikTok. But of course, like Book Talk is very geared towards romance. And there's like other corners of it. Not everyone there is looking for spice, but like the amount of people who are like, oh, it's YA, is there spice? And I'm like, well, no. Sorry. And I think like I've definitely seen this conversation a lot in YA spaces, is like what is the correct kind of maturity for content in YA. And I do think young adults need content that explores those things, but I don't think spice or adult content or anything that's meant to entertain adults belongs in a YA space. So it's definitely like an interesting path to walk.
It's almost like they need to have another label for the ones who are 18 plus.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard being indie.
It's starting, but it's not quite there yet. It's starting, I think, more in the indie area than it is the trad published area.
Yeah. Well, because I'll still see them throw like A Court of Thorns and Roses on YA bookshelves, and I'm like, or Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing is not YA. Like, absolutely not.
No.
I think that really goes to a lot to the style of covers too, though. Like if you're looking and you're just like, oh, well, that looks like it would go in YA, and that's something I had to learn the hard way with my debut book. Was I loved the cover, loved everything about it, and that was my Spiffbo book this year. I was like, I love this cover so much. It's amazing, and the artist did a custom job on it, and it was beautiful.
Yes.
And then I was like, but then it was being picked up by YA readers, and I was like, I mean, I guess if you're a more mature YA, there's some things in there that are fine. I don't have any open door theme or anything. It's just a romantic side plot, but there is some gore in there, and concepts. You know, when you elevate out of YA and into new adult, which is what I mostly write, you quit summarizing things and you leave a lot for a reader to infer based on their facial expressions, their tones, their actions. And so I was having some YA readers who were unhappy, and I realized that the cover was a big part of that. When I changed the cover, I started to see the shift into the more correct like audience that I had intended it to be for. And I was like, man, I wish I'd known that before I put the book out the first time. You know, you can have a gorgeous cover, but if it looks like the wrong genre, you're going to pick up the wrong readers, and they're going to be disappointed.
I discovered that about titles, because I have a lot of people think this is Omegaverse, which super unfortunate, because it's definitely not. I hate to be a disappointment.
Yeah. So, Sarah, how did you find like your niche in the indie scene coming on board? Because there's like over 200 subcategories you can put books in.
I know. So I mean, being in the sci-fi fantasy, you can literally put it in fantasy or sci-fi, but I know that most, like, once you start putting the technology stuff on there, you've now covered yourself in sci-fi. So that's why I put mine in the sci-fi space opera fantasy. And I specifically put, it's also fantasy because it's, it's not total techno babble the whole way through. It's definitely more focused on the characters and how they're dealing with all their problems. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to walk that line between sci-fi and fantasy sometimes. Because a lot of times it's like, well, what's the reader going to think? Like if I say, oh, this is fantasy, they're going to read it and be like, but as a fantasy reader, I didn't enjoy it because there were no wizards. And I'm like, oh, well, sorry.
Yeah, that's a great
conversation. Superheroes.
Yeah.
I have a super powerless human against a bunch of superheroes. That's a common fantasy trope right there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then sci-fi and fantasy, the tropes overlap. You have like your epic fantasy, and then you have space opera. They're like that's the sci-fi version, that's the fantasy version, but they can overlap. I mean, look at Star Wars. And Marvel.
I would
all
argue
of them
Star Wars. I would say our Star Wars is a fantasy first and foremost. Like yes, it's sci-fi, but that is a fantasy.
It's myth set in space.
Yes. The Force is not sci-fi. And don't give me midi-chlorians. Like that's not I don't want it.
all the love to Star Wars, but genre
Mhm.
bending, major
Yeah.
genre bending right there.
Yeah.
So main characters, and Mary, I might let you start us off on this one, and then go up to Sarah. With that YA genre, I think there's a stereotype of what a YA, I can talk, a YA fantasy or sci-fi author would make their main character like. It's the girl who's left out and discovers, like you said, Mary, discovers she has a power or something, or she has this ability, or it's the person who's extremely gifted with something like, oh, I'm really smart at this, and they get drafted into like Gundam. Here we go. Oh, you've never piloted something in your life, but you're perfect to pilot this
Right.
mobile suit. Like, and I think those are two ideas of really big stereotypes in the genre. So how did you approach like bringing an originality to the character that you
Yes.
decided for us to follow?
So first of all, my main character is Samantha. She's a human trash fire disaster. I love her with my whole being. And what is so fun is she starts off the series kind of passive. She just wants a normal year at school, right? And then someone's trying to kidnap her. Like, what can you do? And she just becomes more and more insane as the books go on. And I remember this was during SPIFFO. It was another SPIFFO author actually who was reading my book. And I remember her posting on Twitter, and she didn't tag me, but I followed her, so I saw it. And she was like, all right, like so far this is pretty good, but like I'm getting like Mary Sue vibes. And I was like, yes, you are supposed to. Like 100% those first 10 chapters, you're like, this is a Mary Sue. I know exactly where this is going. She's going to end up being like super scrappy and she can tussle with the like most powerful of them. But, like, no, she sucks at everything. And she doesn't get powers. She does have something weird going on that definitely makes her special, but it's like, that's storytelling, I guess. It does not aid her like in any way that's super useful. She is, for all intents and purposes, completely ordinary, and she knows it. And I know you said like, oh, they're kind of left out kind of stereotype. And yes, but it's kind of her own fault because she's kind of invading the space of these superhero students who are like, we don't want her here, like she's not one of us. And she's like, oh, I'm gonna force my presence on you, which can be like a lot. So I kind of don't blame all of the students for not liking her. Anyway, I forget the entire question. I just got so excited to talk about Samantha because she's insane.
No, I think that answered it really well. It's like you've got the character who is left out, but has to address it by not like being who she is as a person.
Yeah.
Not getting that extra special technology, special power. You know, it's not Spider-Man meets Iron Man.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
like,
I'm just me.
There is a moment in the book where it's like, does she have powers? And the answer is no. Like, I don't tease that very long. It's like in the next chapter, like, oh no, you don't have powers. This is something completely different. Oh my gosh, I was totally going to say something and I definitely forgot. I'm just too excited to talk about her.
There's a lot of love here. If you guys are watching too, before I forget it, you can grab the books from either of these authors at the links in the description box if you're watching on YouTube.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say.
Okay.
Sorry. Because that is like a massive theme in the books. It's like the theme of belonging. Because she does want to find like her place. And I think like I looked it up once, and I think the third book used the word together like a bajillion times. That's a rough estimate. Because like when I write for young adult audience, like I think when I was a kid, like all I wanted to do was like, who are my people? Where do I belong? Like where do I fit? And so that's definitely like the question Samantha's trying to find the answer to the whole series. And she is going to make herself fit where she wants to fit, whether everyone else likes it or not. I'll give Sarah the floor now.
Yeah, Sarah, tell us about your main character.
Okay, so Zendara is actually the crown princess of the ruling planet of this solar system, and she's kind of like just trying to find herself. She's still kind of like in that sheltered space that she's like, I don't know what's going on. Now I'm going to go on my first mission. I'm really nervous, and she's not really liking to be around people, but she's also supposed to be the crown princess, so she's supposed to be like at least learning how to do this stuff, but she's like totally not wanting to do that. But she eventually, like, a bunch of stuff happens, and then she finds out she is the person that every 7,000 years is the person who has the ultimate powers, who can manipulate time, space, and everything like that. So yeah,
chosen one trope.
Yep,
No.
she's totally chosen one. And so then she starts finding out like all sorts of like her, like generational secrets. And then she finds out, oh my gosh, there's all these other things that no one was telling me about. She didn't really understand how bad the division between the planets had started to become. And then she has to fight all this to become the queen that she's supposed to become. And yeah, I don't want to go too more. I'm going to start going into the other books and the last book that I'm writing.
Yeah, I love a play on a chosen one trope. I know people have strong feelings about chosen one tropes. I love them, and I especially love them when it's like, yes, I might be the chosen one, but I'm doing this my own way. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the chosen one trope like is so prevalent in YA because it's like that's what every kid wants.
You want to be able to do the crazy fun thing that saves everybody and saves the universe.
Yeah.
Every 16-year-old is the main character in their own head.
Of course.
So, like
yeah. And I know it's not sci-fi or fantasy, but Princess Diaries is one of my favorite ones where it's just like totally normal and doesn't want it.
Yes.
Instead of like,
exactly. And I love that part.
One. Hooray. And that's what yours made me think of just now. It's like, oh, well, I am this, but
I don't really want to do that. Like, I just want to go, into the corner and have my quiet, like, little life over here.
Yes.
It's very Aragorn from Lord of the Rings.
Yes. If you have something in common with Aragorn, you're already winning, right?
Yes. I make a point to go through every set of double doors as dramatically as possible, just to be like Aragorn.
Like, hold on, we're going into church. Dumps water overhead.
Yes.
The riders are coming. The beacons have been lit. I'm trying to think. Churches were one of the first places that came in my head that have the double doors. But I was like, what else has double doors?
Keeps.
Like the White
castles.
House. Boo.
Yes, they do. They do. There's some houses with double doors.
Yeah. Rich neighbors.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's talk about best friends. Because that is something that I love about YA that I don't see as much in adult, and I wish there was more of. Tell us about your main character's best friend.
Me first. Okay, so my main character's best friend is she's kind of gotten the the lifestyle. She's had her parents kind of stripped from her, so she's very, very needy. Of my main character, so they're very best friends, and she even has like they stay over at each other's houses and everything, and she's the chatterbox. At first she's the chatterbox that kind of like jogs my main character constantly, like, and then she also of course jostles her all the time about like boys and things like that. She's the boy crazy one that embarrasses the main character all the time, but she eventually has some things that she even has to face when she starts getting into the other books that kind of make it so that my main character then has to be the person that lifts her up. So they're kind of like lifting each other up the whole time throughout the series.
I like that. I feel like a lot of times the best friend doesn't get like the support they deserve from the main character.
Yeah, I based mine off of because I loved as a kid I loved David Eddings' like epic fantasy, so I based her kind of off of Cedra in that series.
Nice.
So she's kind of like a little like, I love trees, I must be in trees at all times. So it kind of like, and sometimes it becomes annoying, and other times it's like, oh, she's around trees again, that's great.
I love that for her. That's fantastic. My main character Samantha, she has two best friends, two besties. So it's like your classic trio trope, right? Which means obviously one of the trio, like she kind of has like a little bit of a side romance with. But her best friends are Wesley and Naomi. And she becomes friends with Wesley first because they're paired up for their history project together. And I like to call their relationship, and like I have to give credit where credit is due. I did not come up with this. A reader did. Passive aggressive project partners to lovers. But they do become best friends. They go through a lot together, and they kind of become very reliant on each other. And a lot of their arcs are like learning how to trust each other. It is like a bit of a romantic side plot. There's no kissing in the first book. There's some very angsty hand holding. My readers who are romance readers hate me because it is the slowest slow burn. I make them work for it. And then the other best friend is Naomi, and I adore Naomi. I think she's like everyone's favorite character. And when we first meet Naomi, she's actually best friends with the bully, which was really fun because, again, superheroes, Naomi has empathic powers. And I feel like normally the empath is like the really sweet, kind of demure character who has lots of feelings themselves. And Naomi is like running with the meanest girl in school. And I love that for her. But very quickly, she becomes friends with Samantha after they go through some trauma together. And the rest of the series, it's Wesley, Naomi, and Samantha against the world. And I definitely explore like themes of toxic friendship in the first book because, again, YA, I think that's something that all teenagers should they deserve representation of like what does it look like when a friendship is bad. And that becomes very much Naomi's story with the bully she's friends with. And kind of Naomi learning how to navigate a friendship breakup to be friends with Samantha instead.
Wow. So good friendships and then friendships lost at the same time. Oh. And yeah, Steve. Friendship trios. Would you each like to see more or less? What would you each like to see more or less of in YA and or middle grade fiction?
Okay. There's one trope that I subvert that I would like to see done more. Where the immortal boy who is like hundreds of years old and he falls in love with the teenage girl. Also, I'm watching the Twilight series with my husband right now. That's unrelated. But the really, really old boy who looks 17 falls in love with the teenage girl. I want to see that displayed as manipulative and predatory more, which is something I do, but I wish it was like more commonplace to do that because it's gross.
Mm-hmm. I would probably say the love triangle thing is probably a bit overdone in YA, and it hurts somebody, and it's not exactly the healthiest of romantic trope relationships either.
Yeah. I think because this is a really good question. The other thing, because again, okay, with the triangle thing. We are rewatching. Well, I'm rewatching the Twilight movies. My husband's watching them for the first time, and I haven't watched
triangle.
Oh my god, Edward and Jacob are both so horrible. Like I haven't rewatched these movies in so long, and I'm from the
just
Olympic
have her walk
Peninsula.
Away. Find someone nice.
She belongs with Alice. Let's be real. Like, I'm from the Olympic Peninsula. The Twilight books took us by storm. You would not believe. It was very, very integral to my middle school, high school experience because we were like right there by Forks. But oh my god, like anyway, Edward and Jacob, love triangles in general. Let the main character just be her own love interest. And all this to say, Bella is a really good example of another thing I want to see less of in YA, and that is YA main characters who function as adults. And I think that was really prevalent. I keep saying that word when I was in high school, because we had Bella, we had Katniss, we had Triss from Divergent. And if you look at all of them, they all function like grown women, and they all think like grown women, despite the fact that they are teenagers. And I think that has harmed the YA book realm, because now we have adults going into YA spaces and reading these books and wondering, why is this character being so dumb? Like, why are they making these decisions? Because they are 15. Like,
Yes.
Like, and Bella is such a good example of this, because even in the books, like, she makes a point to be like, I'm really the mom in my mother-daughter relationship, even though I'm the daughter. And I'm like, it's not good.
No.
Like, let these kid characters be kids. And it just drives me nuts. Because again, my character is very dumb, and I get these adults who are like, well, I don't know why she makes these terrible decisions. And I'm like, these are the decisions I would have made as a 15-year-old, and you cannot convince me you would have done any better. Sorry.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for the representation, and I do appreciate that there's teens out there that are having to raise their siblings like Katniss, or be the parent when their parent just can't function. But then it would be nice to also have balancing in there. That here's a happy, normal teenager with a happy family who doesn't have necessarily any major trauma beyond the normal that every kid probably would.
Yeah.
What would they be like in the same situations? Would they choose to run off with a hundreds of years old vampire as quickly as someone who's on her own pretty much anyway? I mean, really and truly, it's like.
Yeah. And I will say, Katniss is a great character. She
she is.
Like I understand she's a product of her situation. But it is.
But again, it's that unhealthy parent relationship, because mom checked out.
She did. Yep. And like, it's great that those books exist, but I wish that there were bigger name books with dumber authors. And I will shout out Percy Jackson, because Percy Jackson is a mess of a human, and he is such a 13-year-old. So I will give Rick Riordan props there. He did a good job.
Yeah. So, we've had a lot of unpacking here about the books and the genre. It's sort of the spin you guys have taken on the whole thing with your own characters and your own worlds. It's really exciting. So, what's coming up in 2024 for you guys? Writing, publishing, author events, spiffbo or spiffboxing. We're making it a verb. Spiffboxing.
Sounds dangerous.
I'm spiffboxing this year.
Sounds like an exercise.
This year for me, I just took a bit. It wasn't really a year off. I did spiffbo, but I had a baby almost a year ago, so there wasn't a lot of writing that's been happening. But I have gotten back into writing a new series, because I did finish up this one about a year ago. The last book came out, and I am looking forward to writing something that's still YA, but a little more fantasy. And as for this series, though, the audiobooks are in production, which is super exciting, and they sound amazing. I hired audiobook producer narrator Elizabeth Phillips. She's incredible, first of all. Fantastic. I am, for the next 50 hours, running a Kickstarter to help support the audiobooks. And while the first audiobook will be out hopefully by spring, it should be out by spring. If I want any chance of getting the next two out, I would like my Kickstarter to be successful. It is still quite a bit away from its goal, and it ends again in 50 hours. But for the cost of an audiobook, you can support it, and the reward is a download code for the audiobook when it comes out. So if you are planning on getting the audiobook anyway, it would be super great if you hopped on there and just purchased it that way. But yeah, that's all that's going on with me this year.
So my final book in my series is coming out. Go.
Oh no, I'm sorry. There was a lag. I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, links to everybody's stuff is in the description box, but here's also the link to Kickstarter. And I'm going to drop it there for a second because I know the Twitter people don't have access to the description box. So anyway, take it away, Sarah. I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. I'm going to be finishing up my series. So the 4th book should be coming out hopefully early this year. And then I have already started writing some free short stories that are going to be able for my newsletter people to download and read earlier this year. And I'm hoping that the first book in the YA dystopian fantasy is going to, I'm hoping it will come out this year, but if not, it'll be early next year.
Sarah, what was the name of your book again? I want to read it.
Oh, The Progenitor Chronicles.
The Progenitor Chronicles.
Yep.
Amazing cover.
Thank you.
I'll write that down.
Everybody's like, grab the books.
Definitely.
Oh,
All three.
Covers. So pretty.
Yeah. I think that one's my favorite.
Congrats on the milestone. Yes. And I love that you have like printed versions because so many people like the printed ones, especially in the young adult.
Yeah. Kids don't really read ebooks all that much, I feel like.
Yeah, it just depends, I think.
Yeah. Sarah, with your series ending, how are you feeling?
When I've written the first draft of the last one, so I was like, no, these are my book babies because they're the first ones. And I knew it was happening because everyone warned me the first one is really hard. So I was like, okay. But then this last year, the new series, I've been having to like put that series aside because the new series keeps coming in my head. I'm like, this is not the same character. She's
nice.
Her background is like they're very different. So I'm like, she cannot be in my head while I'm writing this one.
To get out of here.
Yes. I'm like, okay, we need to sit down and do something else. We need to write a short story or something like that to go.
That's awesome. But that's great that the new main character is so ready to go.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Like I was brushing my teeth the other day and like the little prequel thing for how they got their powers in the first place, like just came out of my head. I was like, okay, like write this down. I had like a bunch of sticky notes. And I was like,
nice.
Quick, write it down before it goes out.
Yes. I'm using Autocrit's new voice to text that they rolled out in October. Nice. And it's made things so nice because I can be like roll over from being half awake and being like, where's the cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay. Pull it up, talks a bunch of stuff, wakes up in the morning and I'm like, oh, that was a half decent idea.
Nice. I know it's always fun trying to edit.
To text yourself too. Like,
yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I feel like I lose sticky notes everywhere.
Oh, yeah. That was just the closest thing I had. I was like, I need to write it down.
Yeah, before it goes away.
Yeah, especially because her voice was just so clear in my head. I'm like, I need to write it down.
Awesome. Well, I wish you both the best of luck in 2024. Thank you for hopping on with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and for kicking off our last day of the Blitz. I mean, it's been such an honor meeting you and chatting with you.
Yeah. Have a great rest of the Blitz.
Thank you. Yes, if you're joining for the first time, you can catch the prior 24 Blitz lives on the playlist on my channel. And then we have 3 more today. So we're not done yet. We got a few more that we're going to be doing. And now that I'm saying that, I'm like, what are the genres? I know we've got a dark fantasy and a historical time travel fantasy. And I don't remember. I've done so many panels now. They're all just free. But yeah, subscribe and you can catch those lives and meet the new authors. Thanks so much, everybody.